Marvel World. Under the snow-capped mountains. There is a city, Taj. This little-known old city is inconspicuous in the world. Apart from its architectural style left over from the last century, there is nothing unique about it. However, inside the multi-universe. But here is a place with unparalleled reputation and great meaning. All of these, it's all because there is a mysterious place inside this city. Magic Holy Place. More precisely, it should be the leader in the Magic Holy Place. Supreme Mage, Ancient One. Its prestige resounds throughout the multi-universe, full of deterrence. No matter what kind of ghosts and monsters, they want to enter this place of the earth. The first thing to do is to weigh how to get away with getting under Ancient One. And today, inside Taj. This magical holy place hidden in the center of the city, among the palaces. Now, decorated with lanterns and festoons, it looks like a happy new year. Beautiful big red is all over the magic holy place. Not even the door was spared. Looking around, it was a bustling scene. If outsiders saw it, they would think that there was some happy event to be done. And in fact, that's exactly what it is. Somewhere outside the palace, Mage had a bitter face, looking bitter. Looking at the gorgeous palace in front of him, he sighed endlessly. In just 2 months, we have reached a height that we can hardly reach. Perhaps, this is the gap. It is too real. The gap can be seen just from the accommodation conditions of the two parties. One is to live in a private palace, which is equivalent to a 5-star hotel outside. And he can only live in a brick house miserable, which is equivalent to the dormitory outside. The status gap between the two can be imagined. And soon, Modu shook his head and put the entanglement in his heart behind him. All of this was won by himself, so no one else can blame him. Who told him not to live up to expectations? Decades of magic practice is not as good as other people's 2 months. I am too difficult. Thinking of this, the bitter look on his face became much more serious. At the moment, the door of the temple is wide open. Before entering the door, Modu saw the figure sitting cross-legged at the first glance. Russell Mage, Ancient One Mage has been waiting for a long time. Modu said respectfully. In fact, more than that. It should be said that the entire Mage of Taj is waiting for the protagonist to appear. Only. The name of other mage has no place in this person's heart. Only the name of Ancient One can make him face up to it a little bit. Ancient One? Above, after hearing the name, Russell froze for a moment. Then, unable to hold back his forehead and sigh. Is it because of Supreme Mage again? It is a question, but the affirmative meaning in the words has already indicated the answer. Russell didn't need to think about it. It must be the old woman Ancient One trying to force him to take over. Can I refuse? Russell asked tentatively, clutching his forehead, still unwilling to give up. Modu shook his head, and said decisively, cannot. Ancient One Mage said, even if it is tied, I will tie you to the position of Supreme Mage. Hearing this, Russell couldn't help sighing immediately, feeling a headache. Sure enough, it's like this again. He has heard such an answer countless times in the past few days. Only. If there is a choice, who the hell wants to be this cheating Supreme Mage? Russell felt something in his heart and couldn't help heaving a long sigh. The sadness in the words is like being wronged by the sky. Hearing this, Modu couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. This shit, it sounds like I want to hit someone. If it weren't for knowing that I weigh 2 pounds, I wouldn't be able to beat it. Maybe he can't help but go up and teach him a lesson. I don't know how many mages out there are coveting the position of Supreme Mage. In the end, you are so lucky that you tried every means to refuse. However, my family knows my own affairs. I believe if it wasn't for the Ancient One Mage staring at it. The rising star in the magic world in front of him, the terrifying genius mage, Russell. It is estimated that it has gone to nowhere. Thinking of this, Modu couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The gap between people, why is it so big? But right now, Modu personally came to the door with the order of Ancient One. Russell weighed his own level, but he could only nod helplessly and reluctantly agreed. Then go, take me to see her. If there is no choice, who would want to be the Supreme Mage? If I had known earlier, I would not have come to Taj, which is a bad place. Russell, a serious traveler. When he first came to this dangerous world, he was confused and at a loss. But soon, the awakening of the system made him forget all this. The strongest sign in system, as the name suggests. This is a common system that can no longer be common. You only need to sign in at the right place to get the rewards of the system. And came to the Marvel world, his first check-in location. It is Taj. This magical holy place that outsiders don't even know about. So, full of joy, Russell spent a lot of time looking for the door. And the reward for signing in for the first time in the system did not disappoint him. It gave him magical abilities unimaginable by ordinary people. It only took 2 months to reach a level that common mage couldn't reach in a lifetime. Such a powerful ability is simply shocking. His legendary is all over Kamar-Taj. Even Ancient One Mage, who has always been indifferent to world affairs, is full of praise and praise for him. He personally taught him hand in hand, imparting magical knowledge without hesitation. However, what Russell never expected was that Ancient One actually intends to let him succeed the Supreme Mage? This is so. I want to learn magic with peace of mind, but you actually want me to work part-time? The name of Supreme Mage seems to be loud, but besides this vanity, what good is there? Time gems? It's just a hot potato. A sense of responsibility to protect the earth? Who loves it or not? Russell said no at the time. However, what he didn't expect was that Ancient One's approach this time is so amazing. Walk on the road of Kamar-Taj. Seeing the scene of lights and festoons around him, Russell couldn't help being a little stunned. I haven't agreed yet, you are ready for everything? This decoration, this scene, when has Kamar-Taj been so lively? Hearing this, Modu was a little speechless. How dare you refuse something that other people dream of? However, after a while, he got used to Russell's personality. So, with a straight face, he said in a blunt tone. This is all arranged by Ancient One Mage. She was afraid that you would not agree, so she arranged everything early. Russell. Is Ancient One planning to catch the ducks on the shelves? Whether he agrees or not, let's push him to the position of Supreme Mage first. Fine. Russell felt a little tired. He really doesn't want to take over the mess of the Supreme Mage. Things like protecting the Earth and resisting foreign enemies are not reliable at all. Such a big Earth is supported by a Supreme Mage. It's simply a thankless job, okay. However, the matter has come to this point, and he can't help but choose more. He tried to get away. However, Ancient One, who was secretly watching, was caught back. Forget it. At most, you can fool around in the position of Supreme Mage. Russell thought with some helplessness in his heart. Outside the holy place, huge amounts of square above. Many mages gathered together to watch this unprecedented feast established from Kamar-Taj. Look, that's Russell Mage. No, we should call him Supreme Mage soon. I heard he's only been here for 2 months. Tisk tisk tisk, what a popular dead man. Along the way, exclamations and exclamations continued one after another. Among them, there are also some remarks of envy, jealousy and hatred. It can be seen that they have longed for the position of Supreme Mage for a long time. It's just that what appeared here at this moment was more of a blessing to Russell. For this genius with appalling magical abilities, they expressed their heartfelt admiration. However, when these words fell on Russell's ears, they were a bit harsh. He really wanted to randomly pick one out of the crowd to replace him as the Supreme Mage. However, I'm afraid Ancient One won't allow it. Soon, come slowly. Under Modu's leadership, Russell came to Ancient One. This is the Supreme Mage who is well known and resounds throughout the multi-choice universe. At the moment, Zhang smiled and greeted him. That bright smile was like meeting a great happy event. He has a kind face and kind eyes, and looks like a good old man. You're here, Russell Mage, Ancient One said with a smile. However, what responded to her was a blank stare from Russell. What the hell, what else can I do if I don't come? Could it be possible to hide in the past? Don't look at the grin on this old woman's face. But in fact, it's just a smiling tiger. However, with a glance out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly noticed something different. Hey, Ancient One Mage, what is this? This is a thick book, held firmly in the hands of Ancient One. On the surface, it looks unremarkable. However, Russell was able to perceive the powerful power contained in it. This is the Book of Vasandi, the source of Kamar-Taj's magic. Ancient One said solemnly. But as she said that, she looked over with playful eyes. This will be passed on to the next Supreme Mage. What? Russell Mage, are you interested? Looking up, and noticing Ancient One's interested eyes, Russell couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth a few times. MMP. This is a naked conspiracy. What the hell, if you had taken this thing out earlier, how could there be so many things? Fortunately, he thought he had figured out the magic holy place already. The co-author of this Ancient One still has private goods hidden. However, even knowing that this is the temptation of Ancient One. But, I have to admit, she succeeded. This book was handed down by the Trinity god Vasandra and constructed the entire Kamar-Taj magic system. For Russell, it is indeed full of temptation. Interested, definitely interested. Isn't it a supreme mage? I'm sure Russell. Russell's mouth was full of decisive words in his ears. Ancient One suddenly smiled. Dare to take responsibility. You are indeed the most suitable candidate to inherit the position of supreme mage. Where, if you don't abdicate, Ancient One Mage, you are the most suitable candidate. Russell spoke insincerely. It's a pity that I am old and can no longer take on the heavy responsibility of supreme mage. Ancient One shook his head and sighed. As soon as the words came out, Modu Mage next to him couldn't help but speak with admiration. Ancient One Mage has carried a heavy burden on her shoulders for many years, and it's time to take a break. Hee hee. Russell curled his lips and smiled incredulously. That said, you can only deceive a young man like Modu, okay? Ancient One is getting old? What about cheating ghosts? With the power of the dark dimension to extend life indefinitely, how can there be any saying that he is old? But right now, even if he knew that Ancient One was setting him up. However, he could only pinch his nose and admit it. The allure of Waishandi's book to him, it's as tempting as if some time management master met a perfect beauty. Moreover, he believes that Ancient One definitely has more than this little bit of private goods. This old woman who has lived for hundreds of years as the supreme mage of Megatron multi-universe. There are definitely a lot of good things tucked away. And what Russell has to do now is to figure out how to get these things out of her hands. Russell fell into deep thought, but Ancient One's movements didn't stop at all. At the moment, the smile on her face grew brighter. He raised his palm and pressed it against the void. Mages, be quiet. Soon, the noisy crowd fell silent. The audience was silent. Hundreds of pairs of eyes all stared straight at him. Seeing this, Ancient One nodded in satisfaction this time, and continued. I believe you all know the purpose of gathering together this time. That is, about the position of Supreme Mage. And this one next to me, Russell Mage. The lengthy utterances continued. Ancient One Mage turned into a great orator in an instant, and gave an unscripted speech like a cannonball. Russell next to him was about to doze off. However, in order to save some face for Ancient One, it also established a little prestige for this Supreme Mage. He could only look solemn, with a straight face, pretending to be listening carefully. But in fact, his mind has long gone to nowhere. After a long time, the performance of Ancient One Mage's one-man show was finally over, which attracted a lot of applause. Turning her head, she moved her lips and whispered. Russell Mage, it's your turn next. Hearing this, Russell suddenly came back to his senses. A smile was forced on his face, and a speech draft was brewing in his heart. To be honest, being stared at by hundreds of pairs of eyes is like returning to school. The painting style is exactly the same, however, by comparison. This occasion is much more formal. Russell was brewing a draft of a formulaic speech in his heart, thinking about how to deal with it. However, at this moment, in the void, the fluctuation of magic power came. Immediately afterwards, the black vortex that suddenly appeared in the sky attracted everyone's attention. The huge energy fluctuations immediately caused the mages to exclaim, as if a pot had exploded. Look, what is that? What a powerful magical reaction. Not good. Something is coming out of it, and likewise. Russell's attention was also attracted by the sudden change, and his expression became serious. What is that? I saw, in the cloudless sky. The pitch-black vortex gradually expanded. From the original inconspicuous black vortex, it has become a huge amount soft black hole. Like a huge mouth of an abyss, it constantly devours everything around it. Huge, deep, vast, infinite power came from inside. Just looking at it directly, one can feel a sense of despairing insignificance. It seems that in front of the master of this power, everyone is not worth mentioning. Downstairs, a group of mages were rioting and discussing. However, he was well informed anyway, so he didn't get confused. He just couldn't help but make a vigilant gesture. They pulled out their magic weapons one after another, with serious expressions, ready to fight. Not long. In the dark void, a figure with huge amounts of poked out from it. What appeared in front of everyone was a huge amounts of head. The pitch-black exterior seems to be covered with colorful streamers, which are extremely dazzling. And in the head, the colorful eyes revealed an evil light. The eyes without the slightest emotion were cold and piercing. Like a high god, looking down on everyone, it's Dormammu. Someone couldn't help but exclaimed. As soon as the name came out, everyone's expressions immediately changed, and they became even more ugly. This is the sworn enemy of Kamar Taj, an extraterrestrial Mephisto who targets Earth, the Dimensional Lord. At the same time, it is also one of the enemies that the Ancient One Mage, who is the Supreme Mage, fights against. In the past, they had only seen this name in books. However, when actually seeing him, before he could make a move, many mages were trembling a little. I can't help but have desperate thoughts in my heart. Such a powerful enemy, I am afraid that only Ancient One Mage can stop him. Why did Dormammu appear at this time? Russell's face became more serious. I don't know either. Ancient One shook his head and said seriously. I'm afraid someone is making trouble secretly. Russell nodded subconsciously, agreeing. But soon, he let go of his mind, took a little perception, and found something was wrong. Where is the barrier that guards the magic holy place? Why is it missing? How could Dormammu break through the barrier and appear on Earth? Such a result made Russell a little dazed. How come the magic barrier is gone? For his doubts, Ancient One sighed and shook his head. Someone must have broken the barrier from within. It seems that in our Kamar-Taj, someone fell to Dormammu. Nonsense. Russell couldn't help but curse secretly in his heart. Needless to say, he knew something was wrong with Kamar-Taj. He even knew who the insider that Ancient One was referring to was. In the city below, bright figures stood out. Caecilius, the villain who appeared as a follower of Dormammu in the original plot. At the moment, he was bowing his head and bowing his eyebrows, respectfully welcoming Dormammu's arrival. Not surprisingly, what happened this time was that he played tricks again. However, Russell found it a little strange. Caecilius has the ability to hide from you, destroy the barrier? Just under this nose, can you believe that such a thing happened? If it weren't for being able to perceive the unfathomable power in her body. Russell wondered if the Ancient One in front of him was a counterfeit. I was too careless. Ancient One had a guilty expression on his face. The expression was in place, and a look of guilt was written on his face. Still, Russell always felt that something was wrong. How do I feel? You did it on purpose. On purpose. Hearing this, Ancient One hadn't had time to speak. At the side, the loyal supporter Mage couldn't help jumping out, and angrily said. Shut up. Ancient One Mage is such a person. It must have been too tiring these days to give the guy in the dark an opportunity. Russell couldn't help rolling his eyes immediately. Have to. This guy is indeed the #1 dogleg of Ancient One. People, Ancient One, couldn't wait to jump out to steal the show before they had time to speak. What's more, I even made up the reason. Ancient One was also taken aback. Immediately afterwards, he glanced at him appreciatively, and pretended to sigh. Mage is right. These days, I have been working too hard for the heir. The way she shook her head, coupled with her guilty expression, immediately won the admiration of Modu next to her. As expected of Supreme Mage, I really broke my heart because of Kamar-Taj's matter. I don't know what he had in his mind. Russell suddenly had the urge to touch his forehead. Wake up, silly boy. Ancient One spends all day making tea in the holy place to maintain her health. How can you tell what she is worried about? Perhaps, this is licking, dog. The two sang together, but Russell was overwhelmed. So, he turned his head directly, out of sight and out of mind. Ancient One Mage, how do you plan to deal with this matter? The topic once again returned to Dormammu. The Lord of the Dark Dimension is not something to mess with. It should be said that as long as the villain dares to take the Earth as the unit, it is not a simple thing. Don't look at Doctor Strange to solve it simply. However, this Birdman is open and hanging. In response, Ancient One shook his head. He gave him a meaningful look, and said with a smile. I won't make a move this time. Dormammu will be handed over to you, the Supreme Mage. Exactly, you also need a battle to prove your ability, otherwise the other mages won't be convinced. It's real. Ancient One is definitely intentional. Now that it's all said and done, how can Russell not understand what she means? This is a trial. A test for his new Supreme Mage. Similarly, it can also indirectly help him establish prestige. After all, a genius is always just a genius, and what the Supreme Mage needs is a strong man. If you deliberately drop the chain, wouldn't it be just right to reject the position of Supreme Mage? But soon, Russell shook his head and put this unreliable thought behind him. If it was paddling, he believed that Ancient One would definitely be able to see it. At that time, maybe she will come up with a way to push him to the top. And, those collectibles from Ancient One. Very tempting indeed. Forget it. Let's be serious, Russell thought to himself. At the same time, just test your own strength. Having said that, he is also a little curious about the extent of his own strength. Suddenly, the radiance of magic radiated, and the light of gold enveloped the whole body. The surging magic power erupted suddenly, which made people look sideways. It's amazing magic power. Modu looked at the figure in front of him with a shocked expression on his face. If Ancient One brought him a sense of unfathomable mystery, well, The current Russell is as dazzling as the sun. Shocking power filled the whole body. Under this huge force, Modu seemed to be able to feel it. Every cell in my body was trembling. Worthy of being established by Kamar Taj, the most powerful talent. Even Ancient One couldn't help but praise. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call him a freak. What's even more rare is that these magical powers belong to him. This point is what makes Ancient One really face up to it. Apart from her, this is the second mage in Kamar Taj that originally has such a huge magic power. The source of magic power of other mage is energy drawn from other dimensions. It seems endless, but it has taken a tricky way. In some things, it doesn't work very well. Comfortable. Under the dazzling light, Russell stretched his body. The warm feeling was like returning to his mother's arms, making his whole body warm. The light of magic power enveloped the entire sky. Such a big movement immediately attracted Dormammu's attention. Mage. The voice of huge amounts of came from the air, mixed with irrepressible anger. It's not as cold as it looks on the surface. For these mages who blocked his footsteps, the hatred in his heart is beyond count. Accompanied by its roar came. The pitch-black void grew larger and larger. Deep and dark, but also colorful lines and colors. Gorgeous and magnificent, it looks very charming. However, all this is just an illusion. Hidden under this charming scene is his growing power. The huge amounts of oppression seem to make the air a lot duller, making it hard to breathe. Along the passage, Dormammu's body gushes out more and more. The dark energy gradually spread. The objects that came into contact with it seemed to be corroded, broken layer by layer. Most of the sky seemed to be dyed black. It's like a pitch-black sky. Well, is this the nature of Dormammu's power? Russell opened his mind and took a careful perception. This force is dark, corrupt, corrosive. Although there is no distinction between good and evil in the nature of power. But, put it on Dormammu, it's full of evil feeling. Definitely, man is a visual animal. When encountering such a dark thing, it is normal to directly characterize it as an evil camp. However, Russell will not let him go on like this. On the body, the light of gold became more and more intense. Then he grinned and held out his arms. How about closing the door and beating the dog first? Closing the door and beating the dog? Modu was a little stunned. But he hadn't waited for him to recall what he meant from the abrupt words. Suddenly, Gold's light is getting stronger and stronger. The dazzling light is like a sun falling on the ground. People with stinging pain can't open their eyes. However, it didn't make people feel the slightest burning sensation. However, it's similar. The powerful energy erupting from its center. The sky shrouded in lacquer black was instantly shattered. Like the sun breaking through the darkness, the sky covering the entire Kamar Taj was destroyed in an instant. In the sky, there is only a dark void left, and an exasperated Dormammu. You bloody mage, you're always messing with me. Seeing this, everyone present was a little stunned. What a monster. With a human body, it is possible to confront the evil god Dormammu head-on. What is it but a monster? Moreover, as a newcomer who has only been exposed to magic for 2 months. To be able to do this, it was simply beyond their imagination. However, the only thing worthy of their rejoicing is that this freak, with appalling magic power, is on their side. At the same time, it is also their leader, the new Supreme Mage. Otherwise, they really don't know what to do. Perhaps, the magic level of this new Supreme Mage is no less than that of Ancient One Mage. The mages thought unconsciously. However, my family knows my own affairs. Russell admitted that he was strong enough, far surpassing the ordinary mage by an unknown number of times. However, to say that he has surpassed Ancient One, that is really an insult to his IQ. Even now, he still can't figure out where the limit of Ancient One is. If you insist on positioning the strength of Ancient One, then there is only one word. That is, unfathomable. This old guy always likes to hide things. Who knows how powerful she is? And at the moment, the magical power covering the entire sky spreads and permeates the entire Kamar Taj. Below, Russell stretched out his palm and clenched his fist. In an instant. Ripples. The entire sky seemed to have instantly turned into an ocean. In the flat space, countless sharp blades visible to the naked eye emerged. Countless sharp edges surged like rolling tides. The cold light flickered, making one's hair stand on end. Under Russell's control, it attacked Dormammu. Below. See this scenario. Many mages immediately exploded. This magic is mirror space. Looking at the spectacular scene in the sky, Ancient One couldn't help but praise. I didn't expect that he could actually research the advanced usage of this magic. Modu was stunned, and the whole person was a little stunned. Mirror space affects reality. I thought this kind of thing was just a legendary. In the Kamar Taj collection, there was a record of a few words. However, he has never seen anyone able to do this. And now, he did see it, and it's such an exaggerated usage. Only. This is actually in the hands of a magic rookie. Fortunately, he is our supreme mage, otherwise. In the sky. With huge amounts of skulls, the icy eyes stared straight at him. Staring at the figure exuding magic power below. I thought you guys would have some new tricks, but I didn't expect that after so many years, it's still the same. He is so familiar with this kind of magic that he can't be more familiar with it. After fighting the Ancient One for so many years, if you still can't recognize the essence of this magic, then his dimension Mephisto just hit the wall directly and forget it. Didn't Ancient One tell you that such magic is useless to me, Dormammu? A bone-chilling voice came. What followed was dark energy as deep as a mist. In the pitch-black void, dark energy gushes out, eroding everything around it. And the countless spatial sharp blades also melted under the ice and snow. Hitting head-on, it was like a droplet falling into the ocean. There was no reaction at all. The creepy breath became more and more intense. The dark dimension is devouring the earth, Ancient One Mage. Seeing this, Modu suddenly couldn't sit still, and turned his head worriedly. Ancient One half closed his eyes and smiled. Don't worry, Russell Mage is not as simple as you think. Really, Russell didn't look worried at all. On the contrary, he showed a different satisfied smile. I already knew that such an attack would have no effect on you. But it's not for the sake of harming you, Dormammu. As a dimensional lord, Mephisto outside the domain. The essence of Dormammu has long been beyond this world. Common's method can't have any effect on him at all. Russell knew this early on. However, Common's approach doesn't work. Then use something special, dimensional seal. The voice just fell. Dormammu had a vague premonition in his heart. After perception for a while, my heart trembled. Not good. Turn out to be. At some point, huge magic power had already come to his side. And among them, there is also some special power mixed in. Behind, the pitch-black void is connected to the passage of the dark dimension. Under this force, it is slowly closing and shrinking more and more. Insidious Mage. Losing power, Dormammu couldn't help roaring. At this time, he still doesn't know what's going on. Build the village road in the Ming dynasty, and keep Chen Kang in the dark. This riding horse was stolen by someone. Losing the dimensional channel is equivalent to losing the source of power. His entire body has been assimilated by the entire dark dimension. The source of supply also comes from the dark space. If it is cut off in this way, the connection with the dark dimension will be cut off. On top of Kamar Taj, in Mage's stronghold, isn't it at the mercy of others? Even if this is temporary, it's enough. Thinking of this, Dormammu's face suddenly became more hideous. Shameful human, actually set a trap for me, Dormammu. He suddenly had a realization in his heart. No wonder someone suddenly started the summoning ceremony. No wonder it was such a coincidence that the magic barrier on the earth suddenly disappeared. What the hell, all of this is a trap set by these guys. Dormammu couldn't help gnashing his teeth immediately, staring fixedly at the figure below. This guy. Don't let me see him again. There was a gritted hatred in that cold gaze, as if he wanted to engrave him in his heart. The terrifying void slowly dissipated. Down below, with Dormammu's hateful gaze on him, Russell was also a bit puzzled. It always feels like he misunderstood something? If you let him know that Dormammu has spontaneously made up a conspiracy theory in his mind. I'm afraid I can't help but laugh too. It's just that such naked, malicious eyes made him feel a little uncomfortable. Anyway, I've offended you. If that's the case, why don't you just leave something for me? Finished. Before the dimensional channel dissipated, Russell waved his arms violently. In an instant, countless space blades reappeared. The gleaming blade struck again. However, unlike the previous ones, the power of the dark dimension has dissipated. Caught off guard, Dormammu had no time to react. I can only watch helplessly as countless sharp blades attack and slash them fiercely. Bark. After a crisp sound, the dimension channel just closed. The entire sky also returned to its original color in the blink of an eye. A piece of cloudless, pure and flawless. It's like nothing ever happened. Only buildings corroded by dark energy can prove what happened here. Below, inside the holy place. All the mages had time to breathe a sigh of relief, and the huge stone in their hearts fell to the ground. Then, the scorching gaze turned to the high platform. His face was excited, and he cheered wildly, Supreme Mage. Supreme Mage. Cheers echoed throughout the venue. And, with the passage of time, there is no sign of decay. On the contrary, it became more and more eager. That crazy look is just like the look of a star chaser when he sees his idol. Crazy. However, Russell didn't have time to meddle and let them mess around. At the moment, all his attention was on the weird energy in his hand. The color of the lacquer black seems to have been washed 10,000 times in black water. Among them, there is also the creepy and terrifying aura of Dormammu. What's this? With a daze written all over Russell's face, he checked over and over again. This thing, cut from Dormammu, is his trophy. However, he was still a little confused as to what it was. Is this a piece of flesh dug out of Dormammu? Russell was a little unsure. For Dormammu, who has completely abandoned his physical body when integrating with the dark dimension, this thing should be considered irrelevant, right? Anyway, it is also an energy state. The body can be made casually? And at this time, beside him, Ancient One glanced at it and spoke slowly. This thing is not simple, it is the will of Dormammu. Dormammu's will? Russell was stunned. Yes. Ancient One nodded and couldn't help laughing as he spoke. This is part of his will that he hasn't had time to take back. Theoretically speaking, it should also be regarded as a duplication of Dormammu. It's just that, in comparison, this Dormammu is a bit weak. Speaking of which, in Russell's hand, a strange energy also moved along with it. Under the watchful eyes of several people, it squirmed. After a while, it turned into a sphere. This is... Russell frowned, realizing that things were not simple. Dormammu's head. One of Yuan Tuo Tuo in this hand looks like a small Dormammu. As soon as he appeared, he couldn't help but roared. Damn Ancient One, damn Mage, dare to slander me Dormammu. Snapped. Russell just slapped him across the face. What are you calling? You have no place to speak here. Beside, Ancient One couldn't help but smile too. Modu was also a little stunned. Is this really Dormammu? Why is there such a big gap from the terrifying look just now? This Dormammu is a bit weak, Russell commented sharply. It's like an empty shell. Light has the eerie air of a dark dimension. However, the strength is pitifully weak, it can only be used to frighten people. It didn't even take a lot of magic power, Russell easily locked it in the palm of his hand. Poor, it's like a toy, however, this Dormammu feels pretty good. Whether it is flattened or rounded, it cannot be hurt at all. Like a ball, full of elasticity, it will return to its original state in a short while. Needed in Russell's hand, at his mercy. No matter how he roared and yelled anxiously, it was useless. I can only watch and stare blankly. On the side, Ancient One couldn't help snickering a few times. This is the first time she has seen such a miserable Dormammu. After a while, I was reminded, okay, Russell Mage, almost done. If you wait for Dormammu to react, there will be another riot. Russell's magic only temporarily cut him off from the dark dimension. If the Dormammu in front of him is connected to the dark dimension, well, maybe, with the combination of inside and outside, the Earth is really going to be in danger. It's too dangerous to leave him on Earth, Ancient One reminded. To be on the safe side, send him back. Hearing this, Dormammu shook his body, shook his dizzy head, and shouted. Ancient One is right, if you don't put me back. Snapped. With a slap, Dormammu suddenly stopped talking. There was a hint of pain in the gritted teeth expression on his face. It's just a pity. Seeing this, Russell turned his head and said confidently. Why send it back? This is the spoils I finally got. Besides, what does this have to do with the Earth? Isn't it still a magic barrier? How could Dormammu have a chance to come in? Unless, like this time, someone secretly opened the enchantment. As he spoke, his eyes unconsciously looked over. Ancient One. What are you implying? Seeing that Ancient One didn't speak, Russell also assumed that she acquiesced. Reach out and swipe. In the space, a golden portal appeared. On the edge of the swirling vortex, countless sparks lit up. Looking around, you can still see the scene on the other side. Portal. One of the basic magic of Kamar Taj Mage. Then, he stretched out his arm and took out something from the other end of the portal. A teapot. Well, to be precise, it should be regarded as a magic weapon. Magic power emanates from its interior, and mysterious runes are engraved on it. Seeing this, Dormammu suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart, and struggled even more. It's just that no matter how hard you struggle, it's useless. Ever since, he could only yell arrogantly, what are you going to do? You know, I am Dormammu, the great master of the dark space. However, the words are not finished yet. A huge suction force was released from the teapot's mouth. Immediately afterwards, Dormammu found that the whole body was out of control. He could only watch helplessly as he walked further and further into the teapot. No. After a scream, the sound stopped abruptly. Russell couldn't help but reach out and pick his ears. Without Dormammu, it's finally quiet. This set of actions was done in one go, and it was already too late when Ancient One reacted. Looking at the teapot in Russell's hand, she was speechless for a moment. Don't tell me that you have prepared this thing a long time ago? Russell has the ability to make magical artifacts, which she already knew. However, who would have thought that he would have prepared such a container? This made Ancient One wonder whether he had expected such a thing to happen today. Regarding this, Russell just smiled and didn't say much. This is called being prepared. Now, I have agreed to your conditions and inherited the position of Supreme Mage. Russell rubbed his hands together and laughed. Then, this book of Emperor Wyshan. As he spoke, his eyes unconsciously followed her. The intended meaning is obvious. Hand over the good things to me. If he hadn't been thinking about the book of Emperor Wyshan, which can be called the Encyclopedia of White Magic, Russell wouldn't have agreed so easily. Now, the conditions are fulfilled and the test is passed. It's time to hand this thing over to him. Anyway, he is also the current Supreme Mage. For you. Ancient One rolled his eyes, and casually put the book of Emperor Wyshan in his hand. Although there are some deviations in the process. However, the result of the matter made her very satisfied. Although he refused outright, lacking a sense of responsibility. However, the fighting power is really strong. Cooperate with the magic enchantment constructed by the three holy places. More than enough to protect Kamar-Taj, and indeed Earth. Perhaps, he will be able to surpass me in a short time. Ancient One was deeply moved. It's only been a long time, and it's already been able to achieve this level. It's only a matter of time before she surpasses her. In contrast, she felt that she had spent hundreds of years living on dogs. The smile on Russell's face became brighter as he took the book of Wysandi. What makes this book precious is not just the large amount of magic recorded in it. It is because it is originally a powerful magic weapon. In other words, it is not an exaggeration to call it an artifact. Especially when dealing with black magic, it is their nemesis. Rubbing the rune-covered cover, Russell felt a little anxious. Can't wait to open the book and learn the magic on it. Correct. As if thinking of something suddenly, Russell suddenly came back to his senses. Turning around, he asked, "What do you think about Caecilius, a follower of Dormammu?" While they were talking. As the root on the bright side, the initiator of everything. Seeing that the situation was not good, Caecilius had oiled the soles of his feet, and ran away first. However, I didn't care too much. Russell believes that under his own control, he can't make any big troubles. Hearing this, Ancient One smiled slightly, shook his head. Now you are the Supreme Mage, this matter should be handled by you. Okay. I knew you would say that. Russell pouted, feeling a little helpless. This Ancient One is determined to abdicate and ignore the matter, and he has no choice but to take over. Now, turn around, his eyes looked at the figure standing on the other side. Modu Mage, then please order me to list Caecilius as a key surveillance target. Once you find traces, arrest them immediately. Definitely, if he chooses to resist, he will live or die. Mordo was shocked immediately. The temper of this new Supreme Mage. It seems a little irritable. These words are equivalent to directly announcing the death penalty to Caecilius. Just imagine. This follower of Dormammu. If you encounter the pursuit of the Holy Place Mage, can you resist not to make a move? One man against the whole of Kamar-Taj is a deadly situation. However, he couldn't disobey Russell's orders. I had no choice but to respectfully agree. Yes, Supreme Mage. And the other side. Shield, Trident Building. This is located on the banks of the Potomac River, in the giant white curved building across the river. Looking at the information in front of him, Nick Fury had a headache. For the leader of an organization that is huge enough to rival any country in this world. Few things bothered him anymore. And now, just such a thing happened. Phil Coulson, agent. Are you sure the above stuff is real? It's not the product of some guy's processing? Nick Fury pointed to the photo on the table and couldn't help asking again. Next to him, Phil Coulson nodded helplessly. In this minute, this question has been asked no less than 3 times. Although this is really hard to accept, I am sure that this is the real picture. There is no trace of artificial processing, and it is not a PS photo. This is the real picture under satellite monitoring. Hearing this, Nick Fury couldn't help touching his bare head. Looking at the photos on the table, he frowned. If these are true, then what are the above? Alien visitor? Forgive his short-sightedness. He really couldn't tell what the thing on the photo was. A dark and terrifying, black hole, and a giant monster crawling out of it. And the unidentified luminous body that filled the entire sky with light. That's all there is to it in the pictures taken by these satellites. It is not that he has never seen alien creatures. What Skrulls, Kree or something like that. Even had close contact with these alien visitors and learned about them. It's just that he has never seen the things on these photos. But, just by looking at the photos, he couldn't help feeling a sense of danger in his heart. It's like the relationship between hunter and prey. This is the warning given to him by the sixth sense in the dark. After realizing this, Nick Fury's complexion suddenly turned ugly. It's just that all of this was covered up under his pristine black skin, making it difficult for people to notice it. Only through his furrowed brows could one notice something strange. Phil Coulson, agent, have you arranged for people to go to the location of the incident to gather information? It's been arranged. Phil Coulson nodded. There are 2 agent teams on their way to Kamar Taj. 2 agent teams. Nick Fury muttered to himself, and unconsciously put his eyes on the photo. After flickering his eyes for a while, he shook his head seriously. Not enough. Send me 2 more agent teams. This sudden event cannot be controlled at all. And the warning from the sixth sense aggravated his sense of crisis in his heart. Even if you dig 3 feet into the ground, you must find out the truth of the matter. Nick Fury said solemnly. Whether they are humans, ghosts, or aliens, you have to find out for me. However, our current manpower is not enough, and we don't have any extra manpower to send over. Phil Coulson spread his hands, his face full of helplessness. Hearing this, Nick Fury frowned. After thinking for a while, he said sharply. Then bring back the team from the Middle East. As for the hunt for Tony Stark, let's put it aside for now. We must investigate this matter thoroughly. Kamar Taj, inside the magic holy place. In the center, the holy place belonging to the Supreme Mage is located here. The splendid and eye-catching palace makes people understand the status of the owner at a glance. This is the holy place of Ancient One, and the most sacred residence in everyone's mind. But at the moment, there has been a new owner here. Sitting cross-legged on the seat, Russell held the Book of Wysandi in his hand and read it carefully. Meow incense, like a fairy. The leisurely look is simply extra enjoyable. Raising his hand, he took a sip of the tea, and Russell couldn't help feeling a little emotional. It's no wonder Ancient One likes to make tea here. Such a day is really a kind of enjoyment. But soon, the quiet and peaceful atmosphere was broken. Russell Mage. A voice came, and the figure of Ancient One appeared in the holy place. What's the matter, Ancient One Mage? Russell put down the book of Emperor Wyshan and asked helplessly. These days, Ancient One gave him everything about Supreme Mage. What is the scope of responsibility, what needs to be paid attention to and so on. However, there was no clue of what he wanted. At least give him some artifacts. It's really hard to get something good out of her hand. Russell was speechless. But fortunately, the only thing to be thankful for is the Eye of Agamotto, aka the Time Gem, is finally in his hands. It is logical to have an infinite gems, however, the appearance of this infinite gems is not good. That green light made him unconsciously think of something. Russell Mage, things are almost done. I believe that under your leadership, Kamar Taj will develop better and reach new heights. Ancient One's expression was inexplicable, and he said faintly. Then it's almost time for me to say goodbye to you. Farewell? Russell was startled. You mean, you're leaving Kamar Taj? In response, Ancient One smiled heartily and nodded. Yes. To be precise, it should be leaving the Earth. The next job is up to you. Really just leave? Russell was speechless. He also counted on Ancient One to help him with his affairs. No matter how bad he is, he can still act as a thug. However, after thinking about it, Russell felt relieved. The departure of Ancient One may be a matter of time. Even if he didn't show up, she would still find a way to get out. Just refer to the original plot. As the Supreme Mage, the Ancient One who blocked countless invasions from outside the territory, would be stabbed to death by his own disciple? Moreover, what kind of soul dissipates, the kind that dies and can't die again? It's just ridiculous to say it. He doesn't know if Ancient One is a mortal body. However, one thing is certain. At least he won't be stabbed to death with a knife. Regarding how to continue life in the soul state, Russell has several methods in his mind. He didn't believe that the Ancient One, who had lived for hundreds of years, would not be aware of this. Well, there is only one truth. Ancient One must have escaped by feigning death. All of this, she pretended to show Dr. Strange. The purpose is to enable him to strengthen his beliefs and at the same time stimulate his potential. An Ancient One can retire logically. All of this sounds like something an office worker would do in order to retire. It's just that Ancient One's abacus has already arranged everything one after another. But now, the handover of work is complete, and even such important things as the Book of Emperor Weishan have been handed over to him. Russell had no reason to stop him, so he nodded helplessly. All right. Have a nice trip, Ancient One Mage. Don't forget to go back to Earth often. Especially when purple sweet potato essence comes to Earth to find fault. Ancient One smiled, nodded and said, "Will do. However, before I leave, I think it is necessary to take you to a place." "Where?" Russell asked curiously. Could it be that there are places in the whole magic holy place that I don't know about? Not to mention that as the Supreme Mage, he holds the control of the entire Kamar Taj in his hands. His powerful telepathy ability alone can cover the entire Kamar Taj, making everything invisible. He was a little curious about what Ancient One said. However, Ancient One obviously didn't mean much to say. With a mysterious smile, he waved his hand and opened a portal in front of him. "Come with me." After finishing speaking, he stepped directly into Gold's portal. Russell was a little confused for a moment, but I had no choice but to follow in. Another side. It is inside a closed room. In the center, there is a globe with huge amounts of. This is the magic enchantment control center of the entire Kamar Taj, as well as the location of the passage connecting the three holy places. At the same time, it can also monitor the magical power of the entire Earth. The whole magical holy place, this is one of the most important places. As soon as he walked out of the door, Russell was a little dazed, pointing. "This is the place you mentioned? Didn't you already explain it a few days ago?" "There are still some things that haven't been explained clearly." Ancient One shook his head, narrowed his eyes and smiled. "This is the most important place in Kamar Taj. Not only because this is the control center, but also because of something hidden here." While speaking, she came to the center and skillfully opened a mechanism. Immediately, a crystal-like orb floated beneath huge amounts of the globe. Then, she chanted the spell. Not long after, a deep portal appeared in front of him. "Huh?" One said after another, "How about playing with dolls?" Russell was a little puzzled. But immediately, Ancient One's words solved the doubts in his heart. "Didn't you always want those artifacts in my hand? Here lies the collection that has been gathered since the founding of Kamar Taj." Hearing this, Russell suddenly realized. No wonder it's so mysterious. It turned out to be a treasure room, although I have already guessed in my heart. However, what Russell never expected was that Ancient One would put the treasure room in such a place. In the control center of this Kamar Taj, everyone's first gaze will be on the huge globe and several portals. And no one will notice the organs hidden in it at all. This is the so-called darkness under the lights. Russell felt a little emotional. Moreover, this small warehouse of Ancient One is actually located in another space. It simply far exceeded everyone's expectations. Step into the interior of the space passage. Russell suddenly felt his eyes light up, and his vision suddenly became clear. Inside, the light of magic is shrouded, and the magic runes all around flicker. If it were normal, he would definitely not be able to help analyzing the structure of these magics, trying to figure out how they work. But now, his mind is not on this at all. As soon as he entered the door, his gaze was attracted by the showcase in the center. This is the #1 artifact in the entire marvel, Vadam Wand. A Gomoto gem. There is also a prophetic artifact, the Cosmic Cauldron. The display cabinets are full of collections. Among them, there are not a few that Russell can recognize. Turning around in a circle, the smile on his face became brighter and brighter. Not bad, this Ancient One collection really didn't disappoint me. The richer the collection here, the more artifacts he has, the happier he is. Because, after Ancient One left, these good things are reserved for him. Seeing this, Ancient One smiled slightly and said, "The reason why these things are stored here is because they haven't found a suitable owner. Definitely, she doesn't need it is also one of the important reasons. In terms of her strength, these magic weapons don't have much effect on her." After closing his eyes and meditating for a while, Ancient One spoke again. "There is still a little time, Russell Mage, go out with me for a walk." Holy Place Periphery. Walking on the stone road, Ancient One looked around. A trace of nostalgia flashed in his eyes from time to time. But soon, she shook her head and looked away. Turning his head, he turned his gaze to Russell beside him. "Do you know why I chose you as Supreme Mage, Russell Mage?" "Huh?" Russell suddenly recovered from his contemplation, a little surprised and uncertain. "I don't know. Isn't it because of my powerful magical ability and strength?" Hearing this, Ancient One suddenly burst out laughing. "That's just one of the reasons." As she said that, her eyes looked towards the sky, far away and deep. "Do you know that since your arrival, the whole world has quietly changed? The timeline is in chaos. Even with the eye of Agamotto, it is completely impossible to see the exact future from it. Predict future? The traveler effect? Russell murmured to himself. However, what does this have to do with me being the Supreme Mage? At the beginning, he never thought that he would take over such a mess. As for the Supreme Mage, just leave it to Wan Fu. This is a thankless position, where if you mess up, you will be blamed. The average person really can't take it. Facing his puzzled eyes, Ancient One smiled slightly, but did not answer right away. Immediately afterwards, he swiped his hands. In front of him, a phantom like a long river suddenly spread out. This is the original timeline of the whole world, rushing forward all the way. However, since your arrival, it has become like this. As soon as the words are finished, the phantom in front of him suddenly changed. The straight and complete river was cut off in the middle at a certain moment, splitting into countless small tributaries. Did the urine fork? Russell couldn't help complaining. Ancient One's head was covered with black lines. God damn the bifurcation. This is obviously because the timeline is messed up by you, okay? Although the original timeline has hundreds of millions of possibilities. However, it is still within the predictable range. However, the current situation is completely unpredictable. However, it's all so obvious. There is no need for Ancient One to say anything. Russell himself has already fully understood it. The future is completely out of control, that's why you chose me as the heir. Am I right, Ancient One Mage? That's right. Ancient One nodded, with a childish and gratifying look on his face. Originally there was someone else in the position of Supreme Mage, but now this happens. Speaking of this, it suddenly turned into a helpless sigh. Russell understood what she meant, and couldn't help feeling pity in his heart. Poor Wanfu, just abandoned. It's almost time, and it's time for me to leave here. Farewell, Russell Mage. Ancient One's eyes flickered, and his deep eyes seemed to be looking at an unknown distance. Then, the power of magic enveloped. Chanting the incantation opened a deep passage in front of him. This different portal suddenly made Russell feel something was wrong. In it, he seemed to be able to detect some familiar breath. Breath of Dormammu. Then behind this passage is a multi-universe. Russell was speechless for a moment. You agreed to leave the Earth, but you thought you wanted to wander around the universe. Unexpectedly, you actually want to travel the multi-universe. Not long after, Ancient One waved his hand with a smile and stepped into the portal. And it was only at this moment that Russell suddenly realized something in his heart. He remembered something and turned around and shouted. Wait. Ancient One Mage, leave a contact information before leaving. However, it was always a step slower, and the figure of Ancient One disappeared in front of him one step earlier. Russell suddenly felt some headaches. What the hell, the multi-universe has no concept of time at all. I'm afraid it will take several years to visit Ancient One. But then again, can magical communication cross multi-universes and connect with Ancient One? Inside the holy place. Russell sat cross-legged in his seat, slightly lost in thought. After Ancient One left, he was the only one who took over the mess. The combined combat power of the entire magic holy place is probably not as good as his Supreme Mage. It's not a mess, what is it? It's like letting a college student play with a group of elementary school students. Russell felt a little disgusted in his heart. However, he can't help it. As Supreme Mage, he now has a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. At the very least, you have to set an example for other mages. Simply, such an ordinary day is not so boring. At the very least, Ancient One left a bunch of good stuff waiting to be unearthed. The Book of Vasander, the Wand of Vadum, and the Time Gem, etc. These things, placed outside, are artifacts that can make people crazy. Now, it all belongs to him alone. The fulfillment of this small warehouse feels like it is not much better than Odin's treasure house. However, what interests him the most is the magic weapon he made. To be precise, it should be said to be Dormammu sealed inside. Such a dimension Mephisto, level single universe is the strong will of different combat power. It is simply a good experiment. Moreover, he is quite curious about the power of the dark dimension. Explore its essence, maybe besides magic, there will be some unexpected gains. Damn Mage, kind of let me out, Dormammu, will show you what fear is. Ah. A shrill scream sounded, and the voice stopped abruptly. Speak harshly? Russell raised his brows. A prisoner must look like a prisoner. Inside the teapot, there were endless screams. Dormammu can't wait to go out and tear him apart right now. But obviously, he didn't dare and couldn't do it. He could only curse through gritted teeth. Damn Mage, you wait for me. After the dark dimension swallows the earth, I will make your life worse than death. Dormammu, do what I say. Russell was also annoyed by him for a moment. Swallow the earth? Do you think that's possible? However, since you refuse to cooperate with my research, I can only make you suffer a lot. After speaking, a pot of boiling hot water was poured into it. Among them, also mixed with Russell's pure magic. The nature of magic is exactly the opposite of the power of the dark dimension. In a sense, it is not an exaggeration to call him his nemesis. Ah. Really? After a while, the shrill screams sounded again. This sound made the listener cry when he saw it sadly. After a while, the screams gradually weakened and gradually dissipated. And Dormammu, who is inside the seal, seems to have lost his vitality. Still, Russell doesn't think Dormammu is dead. Just kidding. Even if this Dormammu is a weak chicken, it is still a dimension Mephisto okay. Moreover, he has always been very measured. Good tune, teach Dormammu, let him know how to be a qualified test subject. It will never be too hard. Hey, don't play dead, Dormammu. Russell shook the teapot. Hurry up and say something, or there will be other ways for you to try later. The voice just fell. Immediately, Dormammu was a little weak, but the sound of gnashing of teeth came. Don't do this. Speak up if you have something to say. Under Russell's tormenting offensive, Dormammu was also afraid, so he could only obediently admit his cowardice. Even if he knew he couldn't die, he couldn't stand being tortured like this. It feels like rinsing in a boiling oil pan. Who can stand this? The rippling magic power returned to calm, and the fluctuation of the magic power decreased slightly. Dormammu felt relieved immediately. But in order to prevent being treated like this again, he hastened to say, Mage, how about making a deal? Huh? Russell froze for a moment, then asked, what deal? Seeing that he took the bait, Dormammu was secretly happy and said hastily, get me out of here, and I, Dormammu, will give you the power to live forever. Do you know why Ancient One can live for so long? It's because she is secretly absorbing the power of the dark dimension. How? As long as you break the seal and let me out, then I will give you eternal life. At the same time, the hatred in my heart did not diminish. After I have communicated with the power of the dark dimension, I will definitely make you damn good looking. As long as he leaves this damn seal, he will be able to communicate with the power of the dark dimension. Also, merge into one with another Dormammu and become a full dark dimension lord. At that time, it will be a simple matter to swallow the earth under the cooperation of the inside and the outside. Hearing this, Russell pouted, a little dismissive. I thought you were going to say something, that's it? Who cares about your broken power? Still living forever. Hee hee. Don't think I don't know, the so-called eternal life, I'm afraid it's just being one with you, Dormammu. It's impossible for me to break the seal. Such a good research material, how could it be let go like this? Moreover, the training progress of the Dormammu in front of him has already taken the first step. Will obediently admit cowardice is the best manifestation. I believe that it won't be long before he will honestly cooperate with him in the experiment. Dormammu was stunned for a moment. There's something wrong with this reaction. At this time, shouldn't you be expressing your surprise that Ancient One will use dark energy to renew his life? For any mage in Kamar-Taj, this is news that can break their three views. Who would have thought that Ancient One Mage, who has always been righteous, selfless, and upright? How could such a thing be done? However, Russell is clearly not among them. Because he already knew about it, definitely, even if you don't know, you won't be surprised. Because, he never thinks. The Ancient One who has been the supreme mage for hundreds of years will be a white lotus flower. Finished? Russell raised his eyebrows. When you're done talking, continue. Dormammu tune, Teaching Progress 2.0, start. Everything is for Dormammu to learn to cooperate. How to become a mature experimental subject, however, at this moment. Suddenly, a voice sounded in my mind. The check-in task has been released. Please head to the check-in location as soon as possible. System. It's finally time to sign. Russell felt the urge to tear up his eyes. If the sound of the system hadn't sounded, he would have almost forgotten that there was such a thing as a system on his body. After starting up once from the beginning of time travel, there is no more audio from the system. If it is not in the mind, can still perceive its existence. Russell even wondered if it had crashed. Now, I finally heard the long-lost system prompt, and I was overjoyed. Where is the check-in location this time? Well, I hope the rewards for signing in this time will be as good as ever. The rewards you get for signing in for the first time are really amazing. I don't know which version of the magic ability it is, it's simply appalling. In just 2 months, he turned his magic novice into the supreme mage. If you don't experience it yourself, I believe that even if you tell it, not many people will believe it. This completely unreasonable magical ability is enough to shock everyone. Immediately, Russell put the matter of Dormammu behind him and put down the container in his hand. There will be opportunities to teach Dormammu in the future. At this time, it is obvious that the system's sign in rewards are more important. His mind sank into his mind, and the information of the check-in location suddenly appeared. It's actually located somewhere in the Middle East. Could it be? Is there anything worth signing in there? Seeing this, Russell was slightly taken aback. Then, he suddenly remembered, this position seems to be related to that Tony Stark. The first thing that came to Russell's mind was the famous Iron Man. He has the experience of being kidnapped by terrorists. And the place where she was kidnapped was somewhere in the Middle East. However, Russell was also a little unsure, because he doesn't know where the plot has developed. Since entering Kamar-Taj, he has not paid attention to the outside world. Only by studying hard and immersing in the world of magic can we achieve our current strength. Right now, Russell isn't bothering with that. Why do you think so much? Don't you know if you go and have a look? There are not many things on Earth that can threaten him. In terms of his current strength, the whole Earth is like his back garden, he can roam freely. Thinking of this, he immediately got up. Meanwhile, put away the teapot that seals Dormammu. Before leaving, he did not forget to exhort slightly threateningly. Don't try to break through the seal. If I come back and find a drop of water missing, hee. You understand the consequences. What the hell is this request? Don't you know that water evaporates? I see you are giving me a hard time, Dormammu. Middle East, a remote place. In the valley, a terrorist base is hiding here. Next to it, in the cave, two figures are busy whispering around the design drawings on the table. Inson, what do you think of this thing? Tony Stark whispered excitedly. Next to him, Dr. Yingson also had a happy smile on his face. A sharp comment said, mature exoskeleton armor technology, plus Stark Industries' unique arc reactor. Simply perfect work. Hearing this, Tony Stark was full of pride, bragging without hesitation. That's definitely. This is my latest invention from Tony Stark. It's sure to rock the world. With this big guy, we can get out of this damn place. Having said that, the expression on his face became excited. At that time, luxury villas, swimming pool parties, and beautiful models, you can choose whatever you want. The words were full of the smell of money, but when it came out of his mouth, it didn't look awkward at all. Although it looks disheartened now, like a homeless man sleeping on the street corner. But, he's Tony Stark. This name alone is enough to drive many people crazy. Although it is evaluated by the outside world as a playboy, a cover-girl harvester. However, what cannot be ignored is his genius brain. Trapped in a terrorist base, instead of imprisoning his talent, it excavated it even further. And also designed a cross-age product of steel battlesuit. Tony brags wildly, imagining the wonderful life after going out. But next to him, Dr. Inson looked at the design drawings. After glancing at the surrounding environment, he couldn't help but frown, a little worried. Tony, trying to build it, there just doesn't seem to be enough here. Simple equipment, and a purely handmade production environment. Under such conditions, I am afraid that it is somewhat difficult to realize the battlesuit on the design diagram. And, more importantly, even if it is built, it may not be able to stop the missiles of these terrorists. Yang Sen kept a wry smile on his face. The weapons all over the place are not for display. These terrorists have already turned this place into an arsenal. Hearing this, the smile on Tony's face suddenly subsided, and his brows were furrowed. Yingson was right, under such crude conditions. Whether a battlesuit can be built is a big question, let alone its practicality. But immediately, his brows eased. Now we have no choice but to try this method. Well, I hope they can realize the value of me, Tony Stark, and don't let that damned missile bombard me, Tony said humorously. There is a saying that is good, do it before you say it. I don't want to just stay here and wait for those idiots from the military to rescue me. Once you're done talking, start taking action. However, at this moment, in the corner, a vortex of golden light appeared. Immediately afterwards, it turned into a portal shining with sparks. What the hell is this? In the dark cave, such a dazzling light suddenly attracted the attention of the two of them. Tony, who was about to start building a battlesuit, was even more taken aback. Gulu couldn't help swallowing. Tony at the moment was stunned. Yingson, are we dreaming? How did I see someone come out of it? There was nothing wrong with what Tony saw in his eyes. Indeed, someone came out of it. He was dressed in yellow monk robes, with a kind smile on his face. It was Russell. MMP. The check-in location given by this system is really accurate enough. just arrived at the cave where Tony Stark was kidnapped by terrorists in the plot. Coming out of the portal, he was a little dazed. The disgraced guy in front of him is the future Iron Man, Tony Stark. The sloppy dress can't hide the coquettish atmosphere. Dazzling like a firefly in the dark. However, in terms of handsomeness, Russell thinks he is much more handsome than him. Moreover, being young and refined also appears to be more energetic. But in a blink of an eye, he stopped thinking about it and said silently in his heart. System. Start signing in. Signing in, countdown to 30, 29. At this moment. Beside, the two people who were in a daze because of this sudden change also came to their senses. Can't help but step forward quickly, exclaiming constantly. Dude. What's this? Space teleportation technology. Isn't there a more talented person in this world than me, Tony Stark? Where is that teleportation device? Why didn't I see it? Also, are you here to save me? How did you know I was locked up here? Like a series of cannonballs, questions were thrown out one after another. Excited, Tony stared around the open portal with wide eyes. That way, I can't wait to take out the instrument immediately to find out the principle. And next to him, Yingson also fell into madness. It's really incredible. Anyone who sees such a scene will fall into madness. It's like when everyone is using a black and white TV, someone suddenly pulled out an LCD screen. It feels like a dream. In the ear, the sound of yelling came. Russell couldn't help frowning immediately. I'm not here to save you, so don't be sentimental. The Iron Man in front of him was much more narcissistic than he imagined. No wonder there are so few friends. Such people are not pleasing. And at this moment, inside the cave, the sound of dense footsteps suddenly sounded. Followed by, there was a rush of shouts. Unintelligible bird language. No, those terrorists are here. Tony and Inson suddenly woke up from the frenzy, and turned pale with fright. Russell made such a big noise when he came out, it was hard not to be noticed. Observing the abnormality here through the camera, the terrorists rushed over immediately. Dude, get out of this damn place. Don't worry about thinking so much anymore, Tony hurriedly urged. Just grab Dr. Inson and go into the portal. However, it was a step too late to react now. Immediately. Around the corner of the cave, the figures of terrorists appeared. The black muzzle of the gun pointed at him, with a fierce look on his face. Being pointed at by the gun, Tony's expression froze immediately, and he had no choice but to stop. Smiling embarrassingly, he raised his hands in surrender. Turning his head, a helpless look came over. That's obvious. Good luck to you. Russell couldn't help frowning immediately. He didn't intend to cause trouble, and left this ghostly place after signing in. By the way, I don't really care about the Iron Man thing. However, look at this. These people don't seem to want to do what he wants. After a strange scream, several terrorists with guns came up immediately. There was a trace of curiosity in the fierce expression. They are also a little confused about the portal that suddenly appeared here. But soon, their eyes turned to the side. Russell. Asterisk. Although I can't understand what they are saying. However, from the expression, it can be seen that this is probably threatening him. Threatening him, wanting to catch him without a fight. The figure of the terrorist is getting closer and closer. Beside, Tony and the two could only watch helplessly. I was anxious in my heart, however, at the same time. In my mind, the system's prompt sounded again. Sign in complete. Now I can have fun with you guys. A smile spread across Russell's face. However, he glanced at the guns in their hands and shook his head immediately. It seems that we have to be more serious. After all, he is still just a mortal body. If you are really invited to eat a few peanuts. Even with magic protection, it is enough. And, more importantly, different from other mage, he has never liked to use defensive magic. Things like the energy shield, the ring of Ragador, are rarely used at all. Although, Kamar Taj's magic is mostly defensive in nature. With a thought, a huge amount of mental power is released. This is the telepathy ability, and it will naturally be possessed when you practice magic deeply. It's like Ancient One, which can observe the movement on most of the earth. There's even mind reading, hypnotic ability, psychokinesis, and more. Although not as good as Ancient One, Russell's telepathy ability is not weak either. At least, it's enough to deal with these common people. Quietly, huge spiritual power enveloped the entire cave. Then, Russell's eyes widened. The power of Invisible directly crushed it. Suddenly, it erupted. Huge amounts of pressure loom over. Even the two of Tony next to him were a little out of breath. Mind-crushing. As the primary target of attack. These terrorists suddenly froze and stopped moving. Then under the watchful eyes of the two, He rolled his eyes and fell down. What the hell is this? Tony and Ensign immediately looked at each other in dismay. It seemed that they could see the traces of astonishment in the eyes of the other party. However, Russell's action is not over yet. At the same time, the spiritual energy suddenly spread. In an instant, he rushed out of the cave and enveloped the entire terrorist base. The terrifying pressure filled the air. Russell muttered to himself. Just treat it as killing harm for the people. Click. New York, Stark Industries building. Outside the building, there were a lot of people and it was very lively. Since the news of the return of Tony Stark, the chairman of Stark Industries and the famous playboy, Tony Stark, came out. The whole of New York became turbulent. A large number of media reporters flocked here, looking like crazy. Huddled outside the Stark Industries building for the first-hand press kit. It's just that they feel disappointed. This notorious playboy seems to have a sex change. There was no press conference held as usual to show off. Instead, it was directly indented inside the company, and there was no possibility of contacting it at all. The top floor of the Stark Industrial Building. In the chairman's office. Sitting on the sofa, Tony and Ensign were wolfing down their food. Regardless of the image of the feast, and next to it, a few people rushed over because of Tony's sudden return. Looking at such a scene, I was already stunned. Dignified chairman of Stark Industry, genius scientist, Tony Stark. This is the first time I've seen such a distressed look. Phil Coulson couldn't help complaining. Beside him, Colonel Rhodes couldn't help but nodded in agreement. If you were someone who didn't know, you would probably think that this is a starving ghost who ran out from somewhere. In this regard, Little Pepper Potts smiled wryly and shook his head, feeling distressed. It seems that during the time of his disappearance, he suffered a lot. After a long time, the meal is over. Satisfied, Tony swallowed the last of the cheeseburger and rubbed his distended stomach. Comfortable. I haven't eaten so full for a long time. Seeing this, Phil Coulson couldn't help coughing. Then, impatiently asked, Mr. Stark, can you tell me how exactly you got back? Also, this thing on your chest is, with his words. All eyes were on him for a moment. The bulge on the chest is even more eye-catching. What are you talking about? Tony touched the simple arc reactor on his chest, feeling a little emotional. This is a souvenir from those guys, although it's not a good thing. However, he obviously didn't mean to say much about his own safety. Moreover, Pepper Potts happened to be on the side. Then it's even more impossible to tell her to worry her. Turning his eyes from the corner of his eyes, he noticed the strange figure next to him. Suddenly he asked suspiciously, Who are you? Reporter? Company employee? Who allowed you to come in? It's me. Beside, Potts replied abruptly. This one is from Homeland Strategy. He stopped abruptly in the middle of the conversation. The name is too long, she can't remember it at all. Ever since, they could only look to Phil Coulson for help. Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. Phil Coulson added, picking up the slack. At the same time, smiling and reaching out. Hi, I'm Phil Coulson, Agent Tony Stark, Tony responded nonchalantly. As soon as he heard the name, he knew the nature of this organization. As for these official organizations, he has never been too cold. All right. Being ignored, Phil Coulson felt a little embarrassed. She smiled awkwardly, then retracted her arms. But soon, he adjusted, and a smile appeared on his face again. Mr. Stark, can you tell me how exactly you got back to New York? Our director is very concerned about this issue. Glancing at him, Tony had a look of impatience on his face. You go to investigate the monitoring, don't you know? There is no need to ask me about this kind of thing. Phil Coulson looked embarrassed, a little embarrassed. In fact, we've already looked into it. A vortex shining with golden light seems to have crossed the gate of space. Tony Stark came out of it, back in New York. This information, their shield has long been clear. I think you know what I mean, Phil Coulson added with a wry smile. Obviously, he wants to know more. What happened to Tony? What is that gold vortex like a portal? All kinds of questions linger in my mind. Not only him alone, but also causing headaches for the entire shield. Nick Fury even directly gave the order to die, and he must pry something out of Tony Stark's mouth. It's just that Phil Coulson has some headaches. He seems a little unpopular. Hearing this, Tony's face changed slightly, as if he had thought of something. However, it immediately became cold again. I don't know what you're talking about. Turning his head, he commanded without a doubt. Pause. See off my guests. Take this Phil Coulson agent where he belongs. Is there such a rush? Right now, with Potts leading the way. With a helpless expression on his face, Phil Coulson left bitterly. It never occurred to him. The first time I met Tony Stark, it ended up like this. Obviously, he still has a lot of questions in his mind that he hasn't asked. However, Tony never gave him a chance to speak. Look at his unfriendly expression. It is estimated that if he does not leave, he will be called by the security guards to throw him out. This Tony Stark is really not just afraid to speak. Phil Coulson shook his head and smiled bitterly. Now, how should I explain when I go back? Watching Phil Coulson leave, depressed, a little downcast, Colonel Rhodes couldn't help but look to the side and said tactfully, "Tony, you seem to be doing something wrong. To be precise, it should be inappropriate. Now, offend them to death." Hearing this, Tony waved his hand and didn't care. "You know, I don't like dealing with this kind of people. It doesn't matter where they come from, they can't do anything to me anyway." Could they still shut down Stark Industries? As the chairman of Stark Industries, a genius scientist, Tony is fully qualified to say such a thing. He does such offending things every day. There are many people who hate him, even across most of the United States. Not too bad this one. Rhodes was speechless for a while, and couldn't help shaking his head and smiling wryly. With your personality, it's no wonder you don't have many friends. It's too arrogant, and more importantly, he really has the capital of arrogance. While making her teeth itch, but at the same time, she was helpless towards him. Other than him, this playboy doesn't seem to have many friends he can talk to. But right now, as soon as the subject changed, Rhodes asked curiously, "Tony, what happened to you? What happened?" Hearing this, Tony and Dr. Inson looked at each other and smiled wryly. After a long time, he took a deep breath before speaking. "We encountered a strange person. No, it can't be said to be strange, it's just very special kind." After holding back for a long time, Tony couldn't find a suitable adjective, so he could only make do with it. "So, he saved you?" Rhodes asked. There was a twinkle in his eyes, with a little curiosity. Not just because of the military mission. Even he himself couldn't help being curious when he heard this. "Who is this strange person you are talking about? I want to know the answer to this question too." There was a wry smile on Tony's face. However, he didn't pay me much attention at all. It seems that my name, Tony Stark, is not very useful in front of him. This is the first time he has encountered such a thing. And in front of the man who saved their lives. This made him feel an uncontrollable sense of frustration. But soon, he adjusted his emotions. Immediately afterwards, he smiled mysteriously. Before he left, he said something to me. I don't think you can guess what he said. "Did he ask you to hand over all the cover girls?" Rhodes said jokingly. Tony's head was full of black lines. Most of the brewing emotions dissipated in an instant. I just shook my head and sighed. "No. Maybe you won't believe it. He told me that this thing is called magic." "Magic?" Hearing this, Rhodes' face suddenly changed, and he stood up suddenly. "Are you sure it's true?" "I don't know." Tony couldn't help but rolled his eyes. This reaction was exactly the same as when he heard it for the first time. However, how could he think so much about the situation at that time? Anyway, that's what he said. Turning his head, he seemed to remember something again, and ordered. "Just in time for you to come back, Potts. Arrange a press conference for me right now. I have something important to announce." Pause, who had just entered the door, was a little helpless. "Tony, what do you want to do again? Can't you make people calm down? Could it be that I was born to work hard?" Pause thought helplessly. With such a chairman on the stand, I really don't know what to say. However, what Tony said next surprised everyone. "Close the weapons department. This is what I must do now." Inside the holy place, Russell sat cross-legged and was looking at the rewards for signing in the system. Random chat group editor. He never expected to get such a reward for signing in. "However, since you have already obtained it, there is nothing you can do about it. I believe the system will not let him down. System, open the chat group." The chat group is being randomly selected. Congratulations to the host for getting the boss chat group, Marvel version. Boss chat group? Marvel version? Russell was stunned. But soon, he knew what the system meant. In this chat group, the characters that can be invited are all bigwigs from the Marvel world. In other words, the powerhouses of the entire world are within its invitation range. However, there is one point that Russell has to complain about. The name of this chat group, our Shu Ying, should be called the Corpse Chat Group. The entire chat group is for him alone. There are no other bells and whistles. The most important of them is only one. That is, after the members of the group die. As the leader of the group, Russell will naturally receive the blessing of his strength. In other words, even if he does nothing, as long as someone in the chat group dies, they can increase their strength. Since it's called a Big Boss chat group, the strength of the members in that group will surely not disappoint me. Soon. The chat group is officially opened, group members are being randomly selected. The system beeps. Immediately, members join the chat group one by one. Thanos the Destroyer of Thousand Stars joins the chat group. Ronan the Accuser. Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension. At the same time, everywhere in the universe. The few people who were busy stopped suddenly, a little stunned. Chat group. What is this? Asgard. Golden Hall, on the throne. A look of confusion flashed in Odin's eyes. Magic, or illusion, or some kind of artifact that I don't know. In it, he seemed to smell some unusual breath. This thing called the chat group quietly appeared in his mind. This made him have to raise his vigilance. Is this a conspiracy by some people? He thought unconsciously. Immediately, the singing and dancing feast in front of him also lost its appeal. My mind sank into it, in the chat group. He wants to see who is playing tricks on this. Inside the holy place. Sitting cross-legged, his mind sank into the chat group. A trace of confusion flashed across Russell's face. There seems to be something wrong with this script? Is it agreed that there must be a question and answer session when the chat group starts? Don't these people in the group have any doubts about this chat group that suddenly appeared? The entire chat group was empty, and no one spoke. Don't follow the rules at all. It feels like everyone in the group is a diving party. The old water ghost. Seeing that no one spoke in the chat group, there was silence. As the group leader, Russell had no choice but to speak first. Supreme Mage Russell. Welcome everyone to join the chat group. Quiet. Still no one spoke. No response from anyone. The scene was awkward for a while. Russell was a little skeptical because of them. The mentality is broken. These people are really bosses, not fakes? What about the demeanor of a strong man? No one dares to speak out. Or, these bosses are obviously strong but are overly cautious? No wonder. For this mysterious chat group that suddenly appeared in my mind. I believe that no one will not be on guard. It's like when you're using the toilet, a hand suddenly sticks out from the bottom. If you say you're not panicking, you're lying. Russell is thinking about how to solve the embarrassing problem of the silence. At this moment, finally someone has spoken. God King Odin. You are Supreme Mage? What about Ancient One? As soon as he opened his mouth, it was soul torture. The old Torment King. As soon as Odin spoke, he attracted everyone's attention. For a while, everyone in the chat group looked over. Supreme Mage Russell. Ancient One? She abdicated long ago. God King Odin. Ancient One abdicated. When did it happen? Why didn't I know? Inside the Golden Hall, Odin was completely dumbfounded. Also in the Nine Realms, the relationship between Earth and Asgard is like neighbors. How could he not know about Ancient One's abdication? Turning his head, he looked at the throne next to him in a daze. This is his Queen Frigg. It is also the most powerful mage in all of Asgard. Have you heard the news of Ancient One Mage's abdication? Ancient One Mage abdicated. Hearing this, Frigga looked at him in surprise. Where did you hear the news? Why haven't I heard of it? And at the same time, in the entire chat group. Immediately, the pot exploded. Thanos the Destroyer of Thousand Stars. What? The Ancient One has abdicated. Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension. Supreme Mage changed? Are you sure it's true? Didn't lie? Faith, Lord of Hell. Interesting. The entire chat group suddenly became active. Russell was a little stunned. They were not bubbling at first. Why are everyone so active now? However, facing their questions, he subconsciously replied. It's true. Heard the words. Suddenly, the entire chat group fell silent. In the universe, huge amounts of thrones. Thanos' eyes lit up, and he squeezed his fists hard. Hell Dimension. Mo Faith was thoughtful, with a playful smile on his face. In the Dark Dimension, Dormammu looked excited. Gearing up, eager to try. The entire Dark Dimension seemed to feel the change in his mood, and it swelled violently. Supreme Mage has abdicated, so what else is there to say? Invade the Earth, let's go. But when he thought of this, his heart suddenly jumped. He still vividly remembers what happened last time, and it left a deep impression on him. Recalling it, it was the same as what happened yesterday. Looking at the chat group, the name of Supreme Mage Russell is a bit eye-catching. At the same time, there is a vague sense of foreboding. In my heart, a conjecture popped up irresistibly. Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension. Could it be that you were the mage last time? Supreme Mage Russell. It's me. Got his approval. Suddenly, the anger in Dormammu's heart rose steadily. Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension. It's you. Despicable Mage, I must make you pay for your actions. Asterisk asterisk. Although this little injury is nothing to him Dormammu. However, the painful feeling made him go crazy. What's even more exasperating is that he is a dignified Mephisto, the Lord of the Dark Dimension. To be humiliated like this, it's a shame to throw it at Grandma's house. Chattering and swearing. The way Dormammu disregarded his image immediately stunned everyone. How much hatred is there to make this rage? But immediately, I noticed the deeper meaning in his words. From what Dormammu meant, it seemed that he had fought against the new Supreme Mage. Moreover, he suffered a big loss at his hands. For a moment, I felt awe-inspiring. In the chat group, everyone who originally had their own ghosts also gave up their thoughts for a while. The power of Dormammu is well known. Many of them even dealt with him. Even Faith, the Lord of the Hell Dimension, who is also the Lord of the Dimension. I think I can't get much benefit from him. Backed by the Dark Dimension, this guy is a super existence of level single universe. It's a hard stubble, and can make Dormammu deflated in his hands. It seems that the newly appointed Supreme Mage is not easy to mess with. And on the other side of the universe, Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, fresh from business at hand. Looking at the lively scene in the chat group, I was suddenly a little dazed. What is a chat group? Also, what is Supreme Mage? Why have I never heard of it? Could it be that after traveling through the universe for so many years, am I out of date? Carol was a little skeptical about life. Also in a state of confusion, there is the accuser Ronan. He is the accuser of the Kree Empire, the leader of the Kree Accusation Corps. Except for the Supreme Intelligence, the entire Kree Empire is at his disposal. Truly achieved under one person, above 10,000 people. At the moment, he was working on a huge amounts of spaceship, looking dazed. Whether it is this chat group that suddenly appeared. It's still the Supreme Mage mentioned in the group chat. All made him feel strange. This feeling is like suddenly coming to a strange scene. Totally out of place. He wanted to open his mouth to express his sense of existence. However, there was nowhere to intervene. However, at this moment, a sentence that appeared suddenly caught his attention. Ms. Marvel. May I ask, what is the Supreme Mage you are talking about? Carol? The moment I saw this familiar name, Ronan immediately thought of Earth. On that planet named Earth, he encountered an unprecedented blow. He swears, that was definitely the most embarrassing time for him. The look of running away in a desperate manner, even thinking about it now, he still has a deep impression on him. Suddenly, anger welled up. Accuser Ronan, Carol? At the same time, in the universe, Carol was a little surprised. At the same time, he was recognized. Ms. Marvel Carol, Ronan? The infamous one? As soon as the words came out, Ronan suddenly became furious. Accuser Ronan. Damn traitor, you have no right to say that. You betrayed the Kree Empire, you will regret it sooner or later. I swear, you must get retribution, don't let me meet you. As soon as the chatter started, Ronan couldn't stop it. Chattering about Ms. Marvel's sins, belittled her as worthless, and even quoted personal attacks angrily. Immediately, the entire chat group was filled with obscenities on the screen. Russell couldn't help but stare blankly. He was somewhat aware of the grievances between Anti-Surprise and Ronan. However, what surprised him was, this Ronan's temper is actually so violent. As soon as we met, we immediately got angry. Between the lines, it is full of hatred and resentment. However, somehow, in Russell's heart, there was a sudden urge to laugh. The combat power gap between Ms. Marvel and Ronan. I'm afraid it would not be an exaggeration to say that it was a one-handed sling. And the reason why Ronan dared to speak nonsense in the chat group. I'm afraid, it's also because there is a sea of stars and stars. This feeling is a bit like the internet trolls I met in my previous life. In reality, I am obedient, but on the internet, I strike hard. Anyway, through the screen, there is a kind of coming along the network cable to hit me. Carol, Ms. Marvel. Where are you? Report your location, I'll come and find you. Yo ho. It seems that this surprise ant is also a bad-tempered master. Who is beeping with you on the internet? There is a kind of offline dating. Thinking of this, an interested smile appeared on Russell's face. As the saying goes, watching the excitement is not a big deal. Anyway, no matter who dies, it is good for him. Watch a play, watch a play. However, Ronan is not a vegetarian either. Although he once suffered a big loss in the hands of Carol. However, in this case, in front of many bigwigs, it is absolutely impossible to admit cowardice. So, accuser Ronan. I'm in Thanos territory, come here. At Thousand-Star Destroyer Thanos came out to entertain guests. The Supreme Intelligence asked me to talk to you about cooperation. Thanos, the destroyer of 1,000 planets. I'm going to cooperate with you on horseback. You also asked me to entertain guests. You are clearly bringing disaster to the east, and evil guests are coming. No, this is just kicking the door directly. Russell nearly laughed. This is a trick to play. I can't see that Ronan is still a good at cheating people. Lead Ant Marvel to Thanos territory. Regardless of whether it is related or not, it is estimated that there will be a big battle. In this regard, Russell has nothing to say. Only one sentence, don't spit out fast. That is, Supreme Mage Russell, remember to live. Meanwhile, above the spaceship, Ronan sternly ordered. Immediately adjust the course and drive to Thanos territory. The latest order from the Supreme Wisdom, let's talk to this old friend. Underneath, the unknown Kree soldiers could only follow suit. Yes. Asgard. Golden Hall. On the throne, Odin closed his eyes and meditated. He turned a blind eye to the singing and dancing feast in front of him, the scene of Yin Yang and Yan Yan. The whole person's mind was completely put on this chat group that suddenly appeared. Thanos, Dormammu, Ronan. These ones are dangerous people wherever they are placed, so focus on the target. Even Ronan, the weakest accuser among them, has his back against the behemoth of the Kree Empire. Not to be underestimated at all. As for the fighting power of others, it goes without saying. Being in this magical chat group at the same time is a nightmare. He knew very well that his time was numbered. The increasingly uncontrollable power in the body is the best proof. This is a characteristic of the Acer Protoss. The older you are, the stronger your power will be. Only by sleeping can this explosive power growth be alleviated a little bit. It is precisely because the outside world knows his situation that many peepers dare not offend. I can only hope that he dies in my heart. But now, the appearance of this chat group made him feel bad. He couldn't imagine it, when he died. My useless child, Thor. Can Asgard be defended in the face of such powerful enemies? In a trance, an idea suddenly came to his mind. How about releasing Hela? However, he was quickly rejected by him. No, her appearance will only make everything worse. You don't need to think about how much hatred has accumulated in Hela's heart for thousands of years. No one knows her better than Odin. I'm afraid that once she is released, there will be a chaos. The struggle for the throne came second. The biggest possibility he could think of was the demise of Asgard. On the ruins of Asgard, Hela will build a new kingdom. This is the most likely thing that will happen. The more he thought about it, the more he felt a headache. Odin couldn't help but rubbed his forehead. It's still too early to think about this issue. What should be done now is to first confirm the authenticity of this chat group. Although this chat group is very magical, it suddenly appeared in his mind. In the group chat, what everyone said seemed to be true. However, these are just their rhetoric. Whether it is true or not still needs to be confirmed. Soon, Odin thought for a while, and immediately had an idea. Guards, summon Heldam. Yes. The guard below responded and left respectfully. On the side, Queen Frigga couldn't help but looked over in doubt. What happened? Nothing. Odin shook his head, nothing unusual. There is just one thing that needs to be confirmed. After speaking, he got up directly. Go ahead, I have something to do. Then turn around and leave. Not long. In the apse of the Golden Hall, Heldam arrived and saluted respectfully. Your Majesty Odin. Odin suddenly smiled. Here you come, Heldam. I have something here that I need you to confirm. Hearing this, Heldam suddenly became serious. Please do so, Your Majesty. Looking at his serious face, Odin smiled and waved his hands. It's not a big deal. I want you to help me find out who the Supreme Mage on Midgard is now. Supreme Mage? Isn't it Ancient One Mage? Heldam was a little dazed. And right away, he realized that he didn't seem to be thinking about this issue. However, this still made him feel a little hesitation. Peeping a Supreme Mage, honestly, it's too risky. If one is bad, his eyes will be blinded. Don't worry. Odin smiled kindly and comforted softly. Supreme Mage has a big heart, and will never care so much about you. All right. After hesitation, Heldam nodded and reluctantly agreed. Immediately, he held his breath. In the eyes, the light flickered. Endless brilliance flashed in it, and the light of stars gradually faded away. The unbelievable gaze shot straight into the starry sky, passed through the boundless stars and landed on the earth. And at the same time, inside the holy place. Russell is teaching Dormammu. Sudden. A strange feeling came over him, making him stop what he was doing. This feeling is like being peeped by someone. What's strange is that, searching along the line of sight, the trace of the voyeur cannot be found. That distant line of sight, as if separated by a galaxy, makes it difficult to find traces. Russell was thoughtful. Could it be Odin? Only the gatekeeper of Asgard, Heldam, possesses such an ability. His amber-like eyes are incredibly powerful. The voyeuristic attribute is full. Moreover, he is often mistaken for a soul gem by good people, and his big eyes are buckled. Only he can spy on Kamar Taj from such a long distance. Thinking of this, he immediately grinned and waved a greeting. And Asgard. Heldam, who was observing Kamar Taj, was taken aback. I couldn't help but trembled. How's it going? Have you seen the Supreme Mage? Odin asked hastily. Now, it is possible to confirm whether the things said in this chat group are true. I see. Heldam nodded with lingering fear. Sure enough, it's not Ancient One Mage anymore. The current controller of the magic holy place is a young man. Sure enough. Odin thought to himself, what is said in this chat group is true, Ancient One has abdicated. Presumably, this young man is the newly appointed Russell Mage. You are really young and promising. However, Heldam's words were not finished, and he continued. His strength is as unfathomable as that of Ancient One Mage, and he easily caught my gaze. And, he even said hello to me. It's just that this greeting is not very friendly. Not very friendly? Odin looked over with some doubts. Heldam shook his head with a wry smile. In him, I sense the breath of evil god Dormammu. Hearing this, Odin felt relieved. Dormammu, it's all right. It was said in the chat group that Russell Mage just had an arm wrestle with Dormammu. Presumably, this is the spoil left by Dormammu. In this way, it made him feel more confident. Everything said in this chat group is true. Golden Hall apps. Odin looked at the shining golden Asgard, and said in a faint tone. Heldam, how do you think we Asgard should get along with this Supreme Mage? After hesitation, Heldam replied softly. I think. It should be the same as when Ancient One Mage was in power. Just keep it friendly. Although Ancient One Mage is powerful, it has never had the idea of going out of the earth and expanding its territory. The relationship with Asgard can also be called friendly. But right away, Odin denied what was in his mind. No. That's not okay. Today is different from the past. The current Asgard is not as powerful as before. The peaceful life for thousands of years has already made the Asgardians comfortable. Even now, the atmosphere of advocating force is still maintained, and fighting climaxes are often set off. However, what they had to face before was war. War and battle are fundamentally two concepts. More importantly, he could sense that his time was running out. Without the deterrence of him as a god king, Asgard is just meat on the chopping board in the eyes of others. So, we need to go one step closer. Bring this Supreme Mage into Asgard's camp. Only in this way can we block the prying eyes of outsiders. Odin said in a deep voice. Heldam was a little dazed for a moment. Is it necessary to win over Supreme Mage? However, how could he guess what Odin was thinking? As early as not long ago, he had considered such a possibility. Unfortunately, at that time, Ancient One, who was the Supreme Mage, was not allowed to enter. His attitude towards Asgard is also somewhat ambiguous. Neither accept nor reject. Make him helpless. However, the iterative replacement of Supreme Mage gave him another chance. The new Supreme Mage is just a young man. I believe he should not be as difficult to contact as Ancient One. This time, even if it costs money, we must win him over and establish a closer relationship. It's not like when Ancient One was in power, he just ignored his answers. Soon, a good idea came to his mind. Immediately commanded. Heldam, send the order down. The throne succession ceremony is held in advance, let Thor get ready. Choose a suitable gift and send it to this Supreme Mage as a congratulatory gift. Well, we must show our sincerity in Asgard. By the way, invite him to come and watch the ceremony. Heldam's eyes widened suddenly. It is reasonable to give a big gift to the succession of these Supreme Mages. However, the new king ascended the throne so hastily? Said to be ahead of schedule. However, Odin didn't have the time to care about the changes in his heart. Looking back, in Heldam's more bewildered eyes, he added another sentence. Also, isn't this Supreme Mage a young man? Remember to make the ladies dress up nicely on the day of the ceremony. Maybe someone will catch eyes with him. Seeing that Heldam's face was a bit weird, Odin added with a smile. Definitely, this is a good thing. It is an honor for these girls to be favored by the Supreme Mage. I think they'd be happy to do that. That said, it's true. But why does it always feel a little weird? Beauty trap in Legendary? After being sold, you need to count the money? Inside the holy place. Russell is working on big projects with great interest. Daily tuning, teach Dormammu. Definitely, for this kind of thing, always find a suitable reason. As the name suggests, teach him a lesson. Sealed container. Overwhelmed. The aura of dire straits and fiery pervades, it's like ice and fire. It's obviously just a spiritual body, something invisible, quality-less, and illusory. However, under Russell's hand, Dormammu has tasted all kinds of tastes. There are countless sour experiences. He even felt a little numb mentally, and his eyes were dull. Howling or something, I didn't even bother to scream. It finally stopped for a while. Dormammu breathed a sigh of relief. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he poured out all his grievances, and said in a low voice with tears in his eyes. I didn't provoke you. Why did you do this to me? Anyway, tell me why. People under the eaves had to bow their heads. Dormammu at the moment. The tone of the speech seemed low-key. Doesn't look like being a dimensional Mephisto at all. However, my family knows my family affairs. With his current strength alone, trying to break through the seal is simply a dream. Now, he can only pray in his heart that someone can open the seal from the outside. A set of Torment Kings set menu down. That taste makes life worse than death. He also had an epiphany in his heart, and obediently confessed. All dignity and integrity are forgotten. All he wants now is to feel less guilt and to rest for a while longer. Hearing this, Russell narrowed his eyes and smiled. You can only blame yourself. Who told you to speak ill of me? Dormammu was stunned. In the dull eyes, the look of grievance is even worse. How can you defile people's innocence out of thin air? When did I say anything bad about you? This is clearly an excuse to torture me.